Greetings, everyone, and welcome to the Produce Buzzers podcast. We are so happy you have joined us today, and I think you will be too after the show is over, because you will learn a lot about fresh fruits and vegetables, how to select and store them, how to prepare and cook them, and surprising facts about their history and origin. We hope it inspires you to eat more fresh fruits and vegetables, not only for your health, but also for your delight and pleasure as you explore their amazing world of taste and delicious flavors. Eating more of them will transform your life in so many positive ways. So settle back, relax, and get ready for another delicious adventure with the Produce Buzzers. Greetings, Produce Buzzers podcast fans. Welcome to another delicious episode of the Produce Buzzers podcast. Thanks for joining us again. It's the first week of January, and we are so excited to be starting season 5 of the Produce Buzzers podcast. Yes, we've completed 52 episodes, and this is our 53rd. Thank you so much, listeners, for continuing to join us and make our podcast a success. It's been one of the most popular in the food category and right at the top of podcasts about fruits and veggies. I'm Edwin Stepp, your host and executive editor of theproducebuzz.com. I'm joined once again by Teresa Nolan, the founder and president of producebuzz.com, and Rick Stepp and Cynthia Benedetto, contributing editors to Produce Buzz. Thank you for joining us, and we hope you will enjoy today's episode. You know, the weather is changing. It's getting a little colder now. Almost the whole country had a really cold winter blast over the Christmas weekend, and man, it was cold. When that happens, there's one type of food that we love to enjoy in the cold weather, and that's a good, delicious, hot soup. So today on the Produce Buzzers podcast, we're going to talk about soup, and the Produce Buzzers are going to share some of their favorite recipes for soup. Now, soup has been around probably as long as mankind has been eating. The evidence of the existence of soup can be found as far back as 20,000 BC. Yes, a few years ago in an archaeological dig in China, they found a soup bowl, and they could tell that it had been used for soup. How? I don't know, but apparently they knew it was a soup bowl. Now, boiling, to make soup, you have to have some kind of container to boil whatever you're making. And so certainly soup could not have been around until the right type of containers came along. Pottery, which is extant through the ancient world, find it in almost all ancient civilizations. And of course, pottery can be used to boil and to make those delicious soups. The word soup comes from the word French soup. Did you know that? Soup comes from the French soup. And in French, it meant broth, or it meant from the Latin soupa, which meant bread soaked in broth. And the Germanic source comes from the word sop, which is, of course, bread used to soak up soup or a thick stew. So sop, soup, it implies that you've got some bread with it, which I think is good because, a good hot bowl of soup needs a good, nice piece of bread normally, doesn't it? Maybe not always, but it certainly helps.
Always.
Now, one of the first commercial restaurants that ever existed was a soup restaurant. According to a historical count, that was in the 1700s. A Parisian named Boulanger, which ironically means bakery or baker in French. This man named Boulanger opened up what was like a food truck on the streets of Paris near the Louvre, and it served what he called bouillon restaurant, which literally translated is restorative broths. So restaurant means restorative, restores you. So Boulanger got this great idea for serving soup from his carts in Paris, especially during the cold weather. And it took off, and he became very successful. He began to open up more of them all over Paris. It was Boulanger's Bouillon Restaurant, which gave us the name for restaurants. But there were other establishments in Paris before that, and during his time, they were called traiteurs, which they were kitchens that cooked food for people who didn't have kitchens of their own. So they were also kind of the first restaurants. But Boulanger's term for restaurant overtook traiteur and became the name for what we call any kind of establishment serving food to patrons who come there. But the name traiteurs did not completely go away. It didn't survive in France as a name of a restaurant, but in Italy, that name and that term was the origin of the name of a particular type of restaurant in Italy, the trattoria. So, trattoria, coming from traiteur, still denotes a type of restaurant. That's a little bit of history on soup. The first restaurants were soup kitchens. Maybe not for the poor or destitute, but people who had the means to come and have a nice bowl of soup. So we're going to celebrate soup in this week's episode, and hope you'll celebrate with us. There are some famous stories in history where soup featured, maybe most notably the story of Jacob and Esau, the biblical story of two brothers, the younger of which was very envious of the older and plotted very connivingly to take away something from him very valuable. So Jacob and Esau were the sons of Isaac, and Esau was the firstborn. And as the firstborn, he had the birthright, which meant he would inherit the most of his father's wealth and the most important things of his father's wealth. But Jacob was really envious of that birthright. And once when they were working out in the field, Esau was so hungry that Jacob came up with a plot to take away that birthright. And he made Esau a delicious soup and offered it to him. But before he could give it to him, he demanded that Esau sell him his birthright. And that he did. Esau sold his birthright for a bowl of soup. Now, that must have been one good bowl of soup, don't you think?
Wait, it doesn't make sense. So he just was so hungry. He's like, yes, take everything.
Yep. I guess he figured he was going to perish from hunger, so might as well eat and give it away. But the story gets more bizarre as it goes along, and we won't dwell on that. But then it came time for Jacob to deceive his father and make him think that he was Esau. Esau was very hairy, and Jacob was not. He was smooth-skinned. So when it came time to be the birthright to be conveyed on him, Isaac was almost completely blind by that time. And so Jacob donned a sheepskin across his back, so that when his father touched him to convey the birthright, he thought it was Esau. So the story is a bit bizarre and a little somewhat hard to believe that people could be so gullible. Maybe that's the right word. But anyway.
I find it hard to believe that he didn't know the difference in the feel of sheepskin and Isaac's hair.
Right. That's what's so fantastical about the story. But maybe it conveys the truth of the relationship rather than the truth of the actual events, which is what a lot of myth does. I'm not saying it's a myth. All you people out there who believe the stories. I'm not saying it's a myth, but it serves the same purpose as a myth anyway. So, are there any other stories involving soup that you know of, Produce Buzzers?
Well, I want to go back a little bit I find it hard to believe that the first restaurant was in the 1700s. Surely somebody cooked something on the streets and sold it before that.
Well, there were, and I said it in the story, there were these places called traiteurs, which basically were establishments that did cook food for people who didn't have kitchens. Not
Right.
all households had a kitchen, so they could come out and buy food there. Now, there probably were other things. There were other things, but the term restaurant came from this man's establishments, the Bouillon Restaurant, which is means restaurant basically means restorative, or comes from restore, the Latin restare, which means restore. But so that's how we got the term restaurant. And he apparently, at least in history, was the first to use that term, restaurant. So
yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, that's very interesting, because I imagine like the Egyptians with all the things they invented and their work in mathematics and astronomy, surely they had fast food restaurants.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, there would have been markets where certainly food would have been cooked and served.
Yeah.
So it wasn't the first restaurant as a concept of a restaurant. It was just the first time they were called restaurants. So
wait a minute, you had said something about it sounded like boulanger, something
boulanger.
What's but what's a boulangerie?
Boulangerie is a bakery.
Okay, so what's the difference?
Boulanger is a baker. Boulanger is a baker. Boulangerie is a bakery.
Okay, and so what was the word?
Well, Boulanger was the man's name that had these soup carts.
Okay.
So his name was Boulanger, which seemed to be, he was not a baker, but yet the French name for baker is boulanger, which is funny. He made soup. Maybe he served bread too, but I don't. I couldn't find any connection.
Bread.
Well, as we said, soup has to have some bread. So boulanger
absolutely
was the baker, but I don't know. Anyway, there's no mention that boulanger also baked bread, but he made soup.
No, that's interesting.
Of course, we always have to talk about Seinfeld in this show.
Mm-hmm.
And
the stick Nazi.
That's soup Nazi. Now there was soup that people were ready to sell their birthright over and do everything.
Yes.
Mulligatawny.
Restaurants were inspired by Seinfeld, just that episode of.
Well, there is a chain of soup Nazi restaurants now in New York City. I've never eaten one, but I've seen them there. But the original.
I wonder how they got away with that.
That's a good question.
He probably didn't,
I don't know who owns the rights to that. I would think that whoever owns the rights to Seinfeld would own it. But they got the idea for that show on a real restaurant in New York City that was called the International Soup Kitchen. And the man that ran it was, his character and his demeanor was very much like the guy who was the soup Nazi in the show. And that's how they got the idea to do it. One of the writers of the show was telling Jerry Seinfeld, about this restaurant and how this guy would treat his customers when they would come in. And so Jerry said, you got to write that. That's got to be an episode. You got to write it. So he did. And the guy who owned the restaurant was an Iranian man, and he really hated it. He's been interviewed many times, but a few times after that show came out. And he said that, he was really offended by that whole thing. And I read also that what's interesting is that sometime after that episode aired, I don't know how long after, couldn't find that, but Jerry Seinfeld and the guy who wrote that show, he took Jerry to the restaurant, and the owner was there. And apparently the owner flew into a rage and cursed him out and told him to get out of the restaurant.
What a weirdo. Gosh.
And
go
Go ahead. What were you going to say, Rick?
What was the line? No soup for you, or
Yeah, no soup for you.
No soup for you.
Right.
Yeah.
That was really one of the funniest. I was in more than one, I think, wasn't it? I think they had several, but
Yes.
the actor who played him won an Emmy for that role, like best supporting or something, non-recurring role or something. And he went on to make a career. He did commercials as the soup Nazi for a lot of.
wow.
And in fact, I think I read that there was a Super Bowl commercial a few years ago. I don't know how many years ago, but where Jerry Seinfeld and the actor as the soup Nazi were in it together. I haven't seen the commercial, but but apparently it was pretty funny. Okay, so now let's talk about real soup and some good soup. Produce Buzzers, what have you got to offer us today? Who wants to go first with their delicious soup recipe? Cynthia.
So, I was mulling through my soups, and I tend to go back to the same ones all the time, whether it's chicken and dumplings or a chicken and noodle soup, or the purees. They're just kind of easy. A couple years ago, I was in Narragansett, Rhode Island, and we went and ate at this restaurant, and they had this green soup, and I think they carried it year round for whatever reason. When you ate it, you knew you were having something really good for you, but it wasn't like satisfying in a way that like a broccoli cheese or like a potato or something like that. But it was excellent, but it was just the different type of satisfaction, if you will. And I think that it was on the diabetes, because I said I wanted the recipe, and the waitress is like, it's like whatever they use on diabetes or heart healthy or something like that.
What do you mean? A website?
Yes.
Some sort
And
of website focused on diabetics for diabetics.
it was a soup that it's kind of like throwing everything, but the kitchen sink. And then, so what I generally do is I'll make it.
Are you saying that the soup contains everything from soup to nuts?
No nuts. So like red onion, parsnip, carrot, celery, leek, sweet potato, pear, kale, spinach, garlic, ginger, and avocado.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Avocado.
I put the cannellini beans in it, cilantro, 2 shakes of hot sauce, not of a lamb's tail.
Thought you were going to say 2 shakes, chocolate or vanilla?
Exactly. Half a cup of lemon juice, half a cup of extra virgin olive oil, salt and pepper. From the red onion down to the ginger, you chop that stuff up and put it in a stock pot. I saute all that for a little bit, and then you add, it says like 3 quarts of water, so like you can see like how much this yields.
I was asking, it seemed like that was such a thick thing. Where was the water helps thin it out a bit? Did you say a half a cup of olive oil? A half a cup?
Yes.
But then 3 quarts, and 3 quarts.
3 quarts, right? Because it makes like 16 8-ounce bowls. So clearly, like you could just have quarter it. So you add the water enough to cover everything, and add the beans and the avocado, and bring it to a boil and simmer it. And so the biggest part of it is prepping the veg.
Right. Doesn't seem.
Yeah, and then I put it in a blender, and then you go.
Yeah. So I don't know that I've ever heard of a soup with avocado in it. Is there? Maybe there's this gazpacho. I think there's a gazpacho that maybe. has avocado, but topping.
Is it served cold or hot?
Hot. I've only had it hot. I bet you could probably have it cold.
Yeah, I think maybe so. Yeah, that does sound delicious, but it is chock full of everything, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And you could
Wonder if
probably
you could do it
like,
without the oil. I mean,
With
Yeah.
that
It's
it's like
avocado,
if you've got the yeah.
double the avocado or something. Is it one
Mhm.
avocado? How much avocado?
it's one. But I don't know because you'd need to whatever you'd saute the
Oh yeah.
goes in.
Guess you could
But you can
saute.
saute in water, so you don't really need oil for that.
Well, I think for me, what I'll do is I will saute it for quite a while and really try to get the most I can out of the
So everything goes in
flavors.
initially to saute except for the beans and avocado. Did I get that right?
Yes.
All right.
Beans and avocado, the end of the cilantro.
What was the name of the restaurant?
Crazy Burger. Let me see.
Crazy Burger. They serve a soup
Mhm.
like that at Crazy Burger.
Mhm.
That sounds odd.
It's Crazy Burger Cafe and Juice Bar in Narragansett.
You didn't make this soup. You just had it at this restaurant.
No, I have made this several
Oh, you
times.
did make it.
I
Oh.
made it for Jody one last
Oh,
fall.
okay. Because weren't you just in Narragansett?
Yeah, I was.
That's why I was
ironically,
confused.
but
I
two
thought-
times in my whole life I've ever been there.
Right. Okay. All right. Well, let's move on. So, Teresa, what delicious soup recipe do you have for us today?
Well, normally most of my soups are just like tomatoes with a bunch of vegetables thrown in them, but we actually went to a club store and bought a chicken, one
Wow.
of their cheap chickens. You know,
Already
you can
roasted or a chicken?
already roasted. Yeah, I mean, you can at our club store, it's like almost $5 for a whole chicken, and I mean, you can't even buy an uncooked chicken for $5. So I brought it home. We had a little bit of the chicken, and then I thought, I'm going to make some chicken soup from this. And so I pulled the remainder of the chicken off the bone and threw the carcass and things like the wings and things like that into a pot of water with 2 or 3 carrots, a couple of onions, some garlic, celery, and then I covered it in water and cooked it for a couple of hours on low, like a simmer. Then I strained all that away and took the broth and just threw back in some celery, carrots, onions, Cynthia's favorite cannellini beans, some rice and quinoa, and some spinach, and just cooked it for a few minutes to get the carrots and celery softened. And it was a fabulous soup. And then I added the chicken back to it. I didn't cook the chicken in with the broth. I put the chicken in the bowl and then poured the broth over it, which kept the chicken very moist. And you can get like 6 meals out of that and think about it, you paid about $5 for the chicken, and the rest of the ingredients, the carrots, celery, onions, spinach, the beans, the rice and quinoa are not very expensive. So when you're talking about having, inexpensive meals for your family, it's hard to beat something like that. Yeah. And you're also not throwing away the good portion of the chicken, all the broth that comes from the bones and everything. Those are really good for you.
Sounds very satisfying too. The rice.
And you could freeze it if it was too much. I'm a big proponent of freezing stuff.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, most of my
it was so good. We ate it all. So
oh, good. Well done.
Now back up a bit. You started by cooking the carcass in a pot of water, but I didn't hear. Maybe I missed it. But what point do you pull those bones out before you put the veggies
Uh,
in?
Well,
Or do you just leave them
I
in
put,
and eat around them?
no, I put veggies in when I'm cooking the carcass.
Okay.
I put carrots, 2 or 3 carrots, a couple of onions, garlic, celery, and water. And because I don't use a lot of salt, those chickens are salted, and even if you liked salt, you probably wouldn't have to add any salt to it. You cook that, and then you strain all of that out so that you just have the broth left.
Oh,
And then you add back some celery, carrots, onions,
okay.
spinach,
Got it.
rice and quinoa, and some cannellini beans.
Right.
And it's a fabulous soup, and it's not very expensive.
So that's
you're
like a
getting that,
chicken and vegetable broth soup.
right?
That you got the veggies
Yes.
that are, but you strain all those original veggies out. You don't get those.
Yes, I do, because you've cooked them for 2 hours.
Yeah, they're so
So
cooked now.
Yeah.
One thing I cannot stand in soup is vegetables that are cooked to the point of not recognizable in taste.
Mm.
So that always drives me crazy if you get soup somewhere and they've cooked the vegetables so much you don't even know what you're eating. So
Right. Yeah, that sounds
But, yeah.
delicious and very economical.
Mm-hmm.
And how
Yeah.
good that would be on a
And
cold
it's like
night.
kind to your not only your wallet, but you save time.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because a lot of chicken broth recipes call
Mhm.
for roasting the chicken or whatever. So you've already got your chicken roasted, and you've already had a benefit from your chicken too.
Right.
And not cooking the meat on the bones makes the chicken taste better also. So
Not cooking the chicken, what?
not cooking the chicken on the bones. In other words, take the meat off the bone before you make your broth,
Mm-hmm.
and then just add the chicken back to the bowl before you serve the soup over it. And it will be much more.
It tastes better if you don't overcook the soup or overcook the
it.
meat.
Yes, definitely.
Oh, okay.
But you didn't. You left the wings and the thighs, I take it, on the carcass. You didn't strip that meat. Is that correct?
No, I did take some of the thigh meat because there's more meat on thighs, but
Right.
wings are kind of,
Yeah.
especially on
Yeah.
those chickens, are a lost cause, basically.
Yeah, those chickens don't get to exercise their wings very much. From
They're developed to be breast heavy, and they
Right.
can't fly.
Right. But
You know,
they are
one thing
good.
we've learned about making a broth with like the chicken carcass or whatever is if you have enough time to wait till the next day, you can put the ingredients like Teresa mentioned into the crock pot and cook it on low overnight for about 10 hours. And it really leaches out a lot of the collagen and everything from the bones. It's really good for you.
Mm.
So if you're not in a hurry, say you had the chicken at night for dinner, take that and make up your broth in a crock pot and cook it overnight. Then that could be put in the refrigerator, or you could continue on with your recipe.
Good suggestion.
That way it doesn't take as much time, take as much of your time to, have to boil the pot. What did you say? You boil it for 2 hours approximately?
At least 2 hours, yes.
Yeah.
That brings the flavor out.
Well, that's a great suggestion, Rick, but I'm really confused now. I don't know what to think, because I figured you were going to come up with a suggestion that used a microwave, not something that cooks for 10 hours.
That's for later.
Oh, so we will get some microwave advice.
Exactly.
I don't know. This 10 hours,
really
Rick cooking anything for 10 hours just doesn't compute. I mean, it's usually 10
Exactly.
seconds. 10 seconds. Yes, I get 10
It's
hours.
still a time saver because you don't have to really watch it. It just sits there
Yeah, that is true.
and
Mhm.
simmers. And
My crock pot died, and I just haven't bought a new one yet. And I'm enjoying the space that is vacant. And my waffle machine died too. So
How are you living?
I know,
Must be
right?
starved.
You
No
can
crock
make
pot,
waffles.
no waffle.
I had to make I had to make buttermilk pancakes instead of waffles.
Mm. But there's a difference in taste between pancakes and waffles.
100%.
Yeah, big difference.
Yeah, absolutely.
Even though they're exact same ingredients.
Yep.
Not
What are they?
exact. It's got the same ingredients, not the same ratio.
Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, there is
Plus the
something
waffles
about it.
catch the syrup in those little pockets. So
Yeah, that is
that
good.
says-
And they get a little more crispy.
Mm-hmm.
Crispy. Okay. Well, thank you, Teresa, for that delicious soup. I think we should move on and see what kind of soup Rick has. Will it be, listeners, do you think it will be made in the microwave or will it be made on the stove top? What will Rick give to us today? Rick, what's your recipe?
Well, you're pretty close to the truth. It does take a little bit of preparation, but I like tomato-based soups the best. I mean, of course, I'm sure I'd like a soup made with a lot of fattening stuff better, but if you're trying to get fruits and vegetables into your diet, I prefer the tomato-based soups. And I made a little discovery for a quick way to make a bowl of soup.
Oh,
Yeah. So
let's hear
I
it.
started I make a tomato base that I use, like if I put it on hamburger, you can put Italian seasoning in it and it tastes like pizza sauce. And so with the tomato base, I just take a can of diced tomatoes, a can of tomato sauce, and a can of tomato paste. I mix them all together. And then in a pan, I saute jalapenos, mushrooms, onions, and garlic in a pan. And then I add that to the tomato base. And then I can put whatever seasoning I want in that, depending on what I'm making. But I thought once, well, this tomato base that I'll put on a hamburger, instead of like ketchup, I put that on top. Sometimes we make what we call a pizza, where we take hamburger and we cook it and then we top it like a pizza topping. So I'll use that for the tomato sauce and then put the other toppings on, just like I was making a pizza. So I thought, well, I can make a tomato soup out of this. One thing I forgot to mention though is I do put a little hot sauce in that tomato base also. And if I ever want to have ketchup, instead of using ketchup out of the store that has all the sugar and everything in it, I just take that base and I put a little vinegar in with it and mix it up and put some salt. It tastes better than ketchup. So when I make my tomato-based vegetable soup, well, let me back up a little bit though. If I'm doing that tomato base as say a pizza, this tastes like, it's kind of like eating a pizza. We make up our own pizza seasoning. Of course, you can buy pizza seasoning in the grocery store already mixed, or you can buy any kind of Italian seasoning and use it. But in the recipe we use is 4 teaspoons of oregano, 2 teaspoons of basil, 1 teaspoon of dried onion flakes, 1 teaspoon of garlic powder, 1 teaspoon of thyme, 1 teaspoon of fennel, 1 teaspoon of paprika, and 1 teaspoon of black pepper, coarsely ground. So we mix all that up. So then if I want to do a kind of like an Italian flavored tomato soup, I take my tomato base that's already in the refrigerator, put about 3 tablespoons of that into a bowl. Then I take a little bit of the pizza seasoning and sprinkle that in, which gives it an Italian flavor. And then I mix that all up, and then I add whatever vegetables that I'm in the mood for. Like I usually have steamed broccoli in the refrigerator that's already been prepared, so I'll chop some of that up in there. Maybe a little bit of fresh red onion, any kind of vegetables. I made some yesterday, and I had a rutabaga that my brother-in-law gave me that he grew in his garden. So I cut some of that rutabaga up and steamed it in the microwave and added that. And if you have some of these things already prepared, you can make a bowl of soup really fast.
Yeah.
Then, okay, that's the base for the soup. But then sometimes I'll put hamburger in that base and use either Italian seasoning. Well, you obviously you cook the hamburger and then add it to the base, put the Italian seasoning in, or if you want something that tastes like chili, put chili powder in for the seasoning with the hamburger. And it's like having a bowl of chili, but you're getting a lot of vegetables in your diet.
Yeah.
Let's see. Today I made it again. It is like a fast food if you have these other things prepared ahead. I just took, I made the soup like I mentioned, and I put some turkey that I had in the freezer, chopped that up and added it to it, and used the Italian seasoning on that. And of course, I do put it in the microwave to heat it up. So,
of course,
you don't want to overcook it.
Is there such a thing?
Oh yeah. Especially meat. If you reheat meat in the microwave,
I think the microwave overcooks everything.
Right. But that's a quick way to have soup, because a lot of people don't make soup because it's time consuming. But
yeah, it can be. But that
if you have some kind of a base that's already prepared, and you could put that base in the freezer if you don't eat it that often. Anyway, that's like a little hack that I use.
Oh, very good. And that's great about the
one.
time saving tips. I appreciate that. I think our listeners will too.
And the variety, you could make ketchup, you can go in a lot of different directions.
Yeah.
I even, you can make A1 sauce. There's a hack for making it.
Not from tomato base, is it? There's no tomato.
Well, if you may not want the A1 sauce with all the vegetables in there, but if you just take that tomato base and mix it with balsamic vinegar, it tastes almost identical to A1 sauce.
Really, it's thicker though, I would think.
So you have to mix it so that it's just enough of the vinegar so that it's dark like A1 sauce.
Okay.
And to me it tastes just as good.
It's thicker though, I would think.
Well, you can make it as thick as you want. You can use more tomato paste if you want to thicken it.
Now tell me your base again. I know you said it. It's a can of diced tomatoes, a can of tomato sauce, and a can of tomato paste. Is it a small can of tomato paste? One of the smallest ones. And then you put the spices to that, or do you just use that as the base? Those three things as the base.
I use that as the base, and then if I want spices, if I'm going to
put it in when you're ready to make it. Got it. Okay.
Sometimes I can make ketchup.
Yeah, you were saying that.
By just taking that and mixing it with some vinegar.
Right. And
then you don't have all that sugar in your diet that you would get.
Ketchup is loaded. Store-bought ketchup is loaded with sugar.
And the good thing about canned tomato products is it's usually just tomatoes, maybe water or salt. There's not a lot of added ingredients. So you're actually getting tomato as the main ingredient.
I couldn't remember if you said you went ahead and added spices to that as a base, but that wouldn't make sense because depending on which way you wanted to go with it, the spices would compete. And that's what I thought you said, but I just wanted to clarify that.
But you can make a chili like that, just even would add black. Like when I traveled, sometimes I was cooking my own soup in the hotel room. I would, if I had a microwave in the hotel room, I would open up a can of black beans, throw the diced tomatoes in there, and mix that together, and then I would put some chili powder in it and heat it up in the microwave, and it was a really good chili. I didn't bother cooking meat to go in there, but
and then you claim the per diem instead of turning in your expenses.
Yeah, exactly.
That's one thing Teresa was able to negotiate for me in those days, is that they gave us a certain amount of money for travel, and my objective was to spend as little as possible. so that I could keep the rest.
Yeah, that was good. Well, you
They're
did a
staying at
can of
Marriott.
beans and a can of tomatoes.
Yeah, like a hot
And-
dog stuck
and
on
the
the end of a
per diem,
switch.
per diem in a city that's $75 a day. You were spending $3. Let's see,
Yeah.
$72 profit. Oh, it's a profit deal. I get it.
Yeah.
And it keeps your expenses lower because you're not saying I might as well go to that fancy restaurant, you know.
Yeah. Right. And the days of when I was working for someone else and wasn't self-employed and they reimbursed the expenses, then you're staying at the Marriott, then you're, doing
Right.
flying everywhere instead of driving occasionally.
Yeah. Okay. Well, very good, Rick. Those are very practical, economical, and delicious suggestions. Thank you so much. So anyway, well, I debated on whether I should offer a recipe or not. There's so many great soups out there that I love to make at home, like bird's nest soup. You've all had that, right?
No, what's
No,
that?
thank you.
You've never heard of bird's nest soup, Cynthia?
No.
It's a
It is
Chinese
actually
dish.
Pestilence of
it is
disease?
exactly what it says. It's made from bird's nests. It's a Chinese dish, of course.
What's
You'd have
that?
to be
So,
desperate.
It
what do you mean? It's a Chinese dish, of course.
well,
What's that supposed to mean?
that was I'm sorry, that was an
Exactly.
insensitive comment. No, but they just have some very
I'm not Chinese.
no, look, they just have some very exotic dishes. They also have shark fin soup.
It's no different than saying it's a French dish, of course.
Right.
Except
it-
no one in this podcast is French.
Oh, but we do have French roots here. So there.
Okay.
Okay, German then. We're all half German at least.
But bird's nest soup, I've never had that, but it is made from bird's nests, and the type of bird is very important. It's called a swiftlet, I think, or something. I can't remember now. But it's very hard to find, and they take those. I don't know. I don't have a recipe for it, so I won't go into
Good.
it.
Moving right along.
But I did have shark fin soup once. I spent a couple of summers in China. Ilk was right. I wasn't really that thrilled with it, but
Guy, if you didn't like it,
I didn't say I didn't like it. I just said I wasn't that thrilled with it. It's not something I would come back to. It wasn't any better than chicken soup. I mean, chicken soup's very good, but it was interesting because at the time we were in China, they were just coming out of just opening up to the world, and their economy wasn't as strong as it is now, and the average person there didn't make a lot of money. And we were treated to this banquet at the school where we were studying Chinese, and the president of the university was there. He was the head and hosting, and he said, "We're going to have shark fin soup." And the teachers, the Chinese teachers that were there with us, their eyes lit up, and you could tell they were just so ecstatic to be getting served Chinese soup, our shark fin soup. And we found out that a pound of shark fin to make, to get, which is what, of course, shark fin soup is made from, was the equivalent of a whole year's wage for most of these people. So there they were being served this soup on our behalf because we were there.
Wow.
The 8 American students that were there, including me, were kind of not so thrilled. We weren't certain what to think about eating shark fin soup, but we did, to not insult our guests or our hosts.
My favorite was when you said that they brought out deep fried baby chicks.
Right.
You remember that?
Oh, are you serious?
Yep. So we get up one morning. We stayed in this house, which actually used to
Sorry, I
be.
just threw up in my mouth.
So we were boarded in this house in Nanjing, which used to be the capital of China before the communist takeover. And this house was the Canadian embassy during that time. And so it was a big house, and it had its own kitchen. And so every morning we ate all our meals there too. They had chefs. They had 2 chefs there to feed us the whole time we were there for a month, 6 weeks almost. So, every morning we'd come down and eat breakfast, and they would already be working on lunch by that time. We came down one morning, and beside the door of the kitchen was this basket full of little baby, furry, fuzzy chicks, yellow chicks, tweeting. And all the girls, and all of us were going, oh, how cute. Look at these little chicks. Oh, I wonder what they're going to do with it. Our chefs couldn't speak very good English, so we couldn't ask them questions and get any kind of good answers. So, we're thinking, oh, they're probably taking them home. They're going to put them, in their backyard and raise them up. Well, that evening when we came home for supper, the chefs brought out on a big platter all those baby chicks fried. There they were in a mound.
So were they still yellow?
No, they were fried. They probably, I don't
did
know.
They have
they had to get
dip? Did they have like a tempura on top of them?
No, they were just I
Just
guess,
throwing
plucked
it-
and fried, and then deep fried in oil, probably just dipped them down.
They were plucked. So they're little fuzz?
Well, I saw
Or
no
maybe that
evidence
guy's
of feathers.
singed off?
What is that? It's called down at that point, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
down.
Yeah, it's not even down yet. That would easily. Do you think they put it in a deep fryer, or do you think they put it in a stir fry?
I think it was a deep fryer, the way it came out.
If it was a deep fryer, then that stuff would just melt right off. You wouldn't have to
Probably
worry.
don't need. Yeah, and how could you get it
Oh.
off without stripping?
You'd
the
have
meat?
to singe it off. You'd have to singe it off,
Right.
which is what they do with the leftover feathers
Right.
after a chicken has been plucked.
And if you've if you've complained about your buffalo wings not having much meat, eat a baby chick.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, that's terrible.
I wonder if did they kill the chicks before they fried them, or
I have no idea, and I didn't want to know. The girls were crying.
I would say no.
The
Like,
girl-
why would you, like, as awful as this is, like, wouldn't you just like zap them in, like, how hot's that oil? So
I don't know
150
how
degrees?
look, their heads were still on. I don't know how you kill a baby chick, especially
With
there must have been 3 dozen or more in that basket when we left that morning, and it looked like that was about how many were on the
How
plate.
many were eaten?
The girls couldn't eat them at all.
Oh.
I ate a few of them, but it was just so
What did it
little
taste
meat.
like?
Sort of like
It's
chicken
chicken.
liver. Chicken liver. That tastes like chicken.
So wait,
those
did you-
Chinese cooks were probably in the kitchen saying, let's see what we can get them to eat next.
Shark fin. Yeah, they ate it. Can you believe it? Bird's nest. Well, they bought that one too.
Dumbass.
Oh no.
but so it was the same size sans the fur covering, and so you went like that.
No, I didn't eat the bones. You scrape the meat off with your teeth, sort of like
Who
you
taught
would
you?
at buffalo.
Did they teach you?
Actually, one of the chefs came in and showed us. He
Oh,
ate
okay.
one and showed us how to. They don't eat. You probably could eat the bones because they're so
Yeah.
young.
Yeah.
You probably could have eaten the bones because I've eaten quail where you just eat the bones and everything. 'Cause
Mhm.
it's so they're tender enough. So I just didn't try that, but
Oh.
anyway, so that was
This episode not sponsored by PETA.
all right.
Oh my God.
There are some other weird soups that I came across in my research. Cynthia may have to sign off. Chicken's
Yeah.
testicle soup
Yeah, exactly.
is a soup.
Let's get you guys' testicles in there. You'll see how interesting you think it really is.
Yeah.
Oh.
Oh, that's a soup. The menudo, which you've probably heard of, and maybe you've had it, but the main ingredient for menudo is supposed to be cow's stomach. So I don't think it's always made with cow's stomach. But
You know what? I'm not that sophisticated to eat all this stuff. I just want just plain.
And some tribes at the foot of Mount Kilimanjaro in Africa have a soup they call kiburu soup. And this is made with, there's other things in it, but the primary ingredients are bananas and coffee. And there is a special secret, not secret, but a special ingredient, which is key to making the soup. It's most tasty, and that is dirt. So bananas, coffee, and dirt.
Yuck.
The dirt is supposed to add the saltiness to the soup and an earthy taste.
Ah.
Yuck.
So that's the news from Soup World, the soup kitchen. But I do have a soup that there is one soup that I like to make, which is a bit exotic, and it's called tom kha gai. It's a Thai soup. It's tom kha is the base. It's coconut base, basically. And gai is the Thai word for chicken. So it's a chicken coconut soup. Maybe you have had it before in some Thai restaurants. It's one of my favorite soups, and I learned to make it because it's so delicious. You have, of course, the coconut milk. You use coconut milk. You need chicken broth. Chicken broth is the main ingredient as far as volume. Of course, you need the typical Thai spices, ginger and garlic. And one very important ingredient for this soup are Thai lime leaves, or mekrut, as they're called. Not easy to find. If you're in a large city with an Asian grocery store, they're easy to find. And here in North Carolina, I was able to find an Asian store close to Asheville that had them. But these lime leaves, they soak in there and give it a nice flavor. Lemongrass, of course, that's the other very important ingredient to give it its flavor. And so that that just makes a great soup, and it's especially good. I've noticed that when I was feeling like I was catching a cold or something, I would get some tom kha gai, and it seemed to always just really knock it out, especially if you spice it up a bit with some chili oil or some kind of hot peppers, which you can do. Also mushrooms, you need some shiitake mushrooms. I forgot that. Those should go in there. And that's my favorite soup to make at home. It's good. It's probably, some of you probably would not like eating so much coconut milk. That's probably not the best thing for you, but it really is the flavor that sets it off. So that's my contribution.
That's great.
So no bird's nests.
Oh, thank goodness.
But going back to the bird nest soup, it has to be a specific kind of bird nest. You can't just go out and, like, you wouldn't want to use a pigeon nest.
No, it is a special type of bird. I think I'll have to look it up again.
And it must be whatever they gather to make that nest. It's probably like some type of a tender grass or vegetable that grows wild, which would taste like shredded wheat or something.
There is a very particular bird's net, a bird that they get the nest from. It's called a swiftlet. And so
it may qualify as a vegetable, actually, depending on how,
I guess it would.
Out of fresh, some kind of a fresh herb or something, and weave it together, and it doesn't really dry out like a regular bird's nest would be sticks.
Yeah, right.
Together.
Well, anything boiled down, it is a vegetable product, mostly the nest.
Cynthia, do you ever make egg drop soup?
Nah, I
used to love that. There was a
I
time
don't like it. I don't like that stuff that's congealed floating around. That's gross.
What's congealed floating around in egg drop?
Like, they put the raw egg in, and then the heat of it just kind of like makes
cooks it. Yeah, got it. Right.
Well, I have to admit, today when I made my turkey soup with a tomato base, I poached an egg and added a poached egg, and it is delicious.
Oh yeah, that would be good.
Put a poached egg in your soup.
Right.
Excellent.
Did you poach it in the soup, or you poached it and then?
No, we have those automatic hard-boiled egg cookers that you can buy.
Put them in the microwave.
No, it's like
I've seen some
automatic
advertised, but I've never.
boiled egg cooker. It steams the eggs.
Okay.
Or there's a poaching dish in there. You just break the eggs into the little poaching dish, and you put it in there, and it steams it, and it comes out perfect.
No, eggs and soup go well together. Ramen especially. Oh, I love ramen. So, do you like ramen?
Yeah, but I don't like that egg.
You don't put the egg in it? It's not ramen without the egg, Cynthia. I'm sorry. You're not Japanese.
I've never even had that before. Is that what they always talk about? College students eat it because it's cheap.
Oh, that stuff is awful. They have these. You can buy these things that you just put in the microwave. Those things are not only are they taste awful, but they are bad for you. They've got all kinds of crap in them.
So
I don't even eat that.
Right.
Back up and explain what ramen is. I don't think I know what it is.
Well, ramen is a noodle soup. It's a Japanese dish, but it's made with usually chicken or pork. Pork, chicken or pork.
And miso base.
Miso, yeah. Mm-hmm. And then you have the ramen noodles, which are a special type of noodle. I can't remember if they're rice or wheat. Are they rice or wheat? They're probably rice. I don't know. Ramen noodles. I know. I've got a recipe for that too. I make it at home sometimes. Chicken version, not the pork version. But what can I say? What can I tell you about it? It's chicken broth, the miso, the mirin. Mirin is another ingredient that they use. Soy sauce. Did we say soy sauce? And you basically heat up that chicken broth and the mirin and the soy sauce, and then you add, I can't remember what I put in mine. I think garlic and maybe some ginger. I can't remember now what I put in there. But anyway, there is a very good version of ramen, not that crap they sell in the containers that is instant.
Yeah.
That's terrible.
And you could add some vegetables to that, right? I mean,
yeah, you do. You can. Usually what I do is put spring onions. You can add just about anything you want to it. If you go to a ramen restaurant, they'll have choices. You can add corn. One of the most popular things is green onions, corn, jalapenos. That's very common. Mm-hmm. Mushrooms, of course. I think mushrooms are usually always in it. And then they usually top it with a boiled egg. Put it on top after it's made. You don't cook it in there, obviously, but you put it on top. But yeah, you could add all types of ingredients.
So I didn't invent putting an egg in my soup.
Well, for that kind of soup, turkey soup, maybe you did. Right. I think I told you guys about the ramen restaurant that opened up in Pasadena. It was only the second of one of the most popular restaurants in Japan for ramen. And the one in Japan was somewhere in Tokyo, and it was like one of these places that you couldn't, reservations were 6 months out to get into. Oh my God. And they decided they wanted to open one in the U.S., and they chose Pasadena, right downtown Pasadena, just off of Colorado and Fair Oaks. And when it opened, for months, they didn't take reservations to this restaurant. You had to come and stand in line. For months, there was a line around the corner of people waiting to get in.
And one of the ones over is Silver Lake Ramen. It's so good.
Is that good? Yeah.
And I'm looking at this ramen noodles, and it says wheat.
They're wheat. Okay. Right.
Okay, here's my question. Oh, I'm sorry, Cynthia.
Because I think the rice would just kind of disintegrate, don't you think?
Yeah, what do they use the rice
delicate.
Noodles? And the rice noodles are used. I think some of the isn't pad Thai noodles, I think, are rice.
Yeah, stuff like that. What?
I've got a question for you guys. How many of you have been to Anderson's Pea Soup off of I-5?
It's
Okay.
actually 101. Oh, maybe there's one on I-5 too. There's
Yeah, I
one
was
on,
thinking it
I think the original one is in what's the name of that little town?
L.A.
Solvang? Solvang.
That was good.
Did you notice that you get gas with that when you have that soup? The Anderson's pea soup?
I don't remember that particularly, though. But
Yeah, the guys from the Lettuce Commission always had a big joke about it. Because one time they were on a trip with the Lettuce Commission before I came there, and they stopped there on their way down to El Centro or something. And they all got gas, and they had to roll all the windows down. It was so bad. Because they use a dried split pea.
right.
And I think they have ham in it and things like that.
Yeah, there is ham in it. I remember that.
And so I was
It's good.
Lori and Phil and Jake and I were traveling one summer. One of the summer that we came to visit you guys, and we stopped there, and it was the same deal.
That's funny. We've stopped there many times. I don't ever remember having any gas problems, but I don't know.
Your stomach's probably used to that kind of thing.
Yeah, maybe.
Cynthia, have you ever made split pea soup?
Nah,
That probably doesn't appeal to you, does it?
no.
She's
Yeah.
too lazy to split the peas.
No.
Takes too long. Gotta have just the right knife. You can buy a kit there at that place to take home and make it. We bought that a couple of times, took it home and made our own.
Oh, okay.
I don't like to do mixes of soup. I like to do my own.
I agree. My other favorite soup to make is chicken tortilla soup. That's a really good one.
Eh.
Okay, be that way. See if I ever make my chicken tortilla soup for you. No soup for you, Cynthia. Okay, time to move along. So, Produce Buzzers podcast fans, it's time for your favorite segment on Produce Buzzers podcast. Yes, you know what it is. It's time to punish you with a home groan. You didn't groan, Cynthia. You're fired.
Okay, do it again. Sorry.
No, that's good. We'll keep it that way. All right, Teresa, what is our bad pun of the day?
Okay. What do you call 2,000 pounds of Chinese soup?
All right.
Disgusting. That's what I call it. Again, it's the 2,000 pounds. It's gross.
I know the answer to this, but I'll give somebody else a chance to guess. Rick, come on. You got it.
I got it.
Yeah.
Wonton soup.
Right.
Is that it?
Okay, that's good.
Yes, that's it.
Oh, that's the first time I've ever actually guessed one.
No, it isn't. I think you usually make up your own. It's better. 1,000 pounds. Wonton soup. Oh, it's too easy and bad at the same time.
Yeah, it was pretty bad.
I knew it wasn't bird nest soup.
Right. Well, Produce Buzzers podcast, Produce Buzzers, thank you very much for your work today, contributing. You guys were just super.
Au revoir.
Au revoir, Cynthia.
See you next time.
Arrivederci.
Bye.
Bye.
Well, thank you, listeners, for tuning in to the Produce Buzzers podcast, brought to you by Produce Buzz, the gathering place for lovers of fresh fruits and veggies. We hope you were entertained a bit and educated a lot about fresh produce. Be sure to join us next time, and please tell your friends to do so as well. Like, share, and comment on our Produce Buzz Facebook page, and check out our website at www.producebuzz.com. There you will find articles about fresh fruits and veggies, how to select, store, and prepare them, as well as lots of interesting facts about all the wonderful bounty the earth provides for us. Until next time, be fruitful and don't forget to veg out.